Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Sell More Book Show, episode 514. I'm Brian Cohen from Self Publishing Live and Best Page Forward, joined by Naomi Nakashima from, oh my goodness, a B2B ghostwriter of glitz and grammar. Help me, Naomi, and all of the places. She's a superstar writing coach. I'm glad that she is back. How are you today, Naomi?
I'm doing so. What an introduction. Oh my goodness. I'm doing so great. Thank you. How are you?
Oh, I'm really good. I'm really good. I love some of the stuff that we talked about last week, which for us was 5 seconds ago because of the magic of recording. But
Yay.
I love some of the stuff we talked about. We talked about this concept you shared about having a vision for your book. Do you feel like um, you need a vision in multiple levels? Like you need the vision for a book and you need a vision for a series that's kind of encompassing that. Do you need a vision for your author brand? Like, could you have a vision of all those things that all fit within each other, like those nesting dolls? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I definitely think it helps.
Hmm.
Um, if you, let's say you're traveling let's say you leave Boston, right? And
Uh-huh.
you're traveling and you have no idea where you're going. And you're just like, I'm just going to see where the world takes me. um, Most people kind of stick to those main roads,
Yeah.
right? Because they don't want to get lost, assuming they don't have GPS. They don't
Yeah.
want to get lost. So they might veer off a little bit. They might take a couple of the exits, but they try to make sure that they stick kind of close to those highways. But once
Yeah.
they have a vision of where they're going, like, oh, you know what? I feel like I'm going to Baltimore. They leave Boston and now they can go anywhere. They can like take the most winding road away from the highway because they know where they're going. And they,
Yeah.
have a vision of where they're going. Even if halfway there they say, you know what? No, I'm gonna surpass Baltimore. I'm heading all the way down to Miami. Or they can say, you know
Yeah.
what? No, I want to check out the Midwest. Like having that vision, even if it changes over time, helps you set up yourself to get there and get there the way that you want to get there, as creatively as you want to get there.
I like that. I like that a lot. Thank you. It just came to me, that question. I wanted to get your thoughts on it. Um, I'm going to get a whole lot more thoughts from you down in North Carolina this October, both in person and virtually for the Self Publishing Live event, selfpublishinglive.com. We've got Naomi will be there. Claire Taylor will be there. Becca Syme will be there. Jen LaSalle will be there, and I'll be there. It's gonna be a really good group.
I'm gonna have autographs. I'm gonna have my book
Ooh,
there so that
yes.
I can get everyone's autographs.
Yes. Oh, that's such a good idea. That is such a good idea. Um, so a couple weeks ago, we asked a question. What are you doing to set your priorities? What are you doing to enforce your priorities in your daily, weekly, and yearly writing and marketing schedules? And nobody answered it.
Oh,
Nobody. Shame. No, just kidding. Just kidding. But Naomi, you've talked about on your social media that, with ADHD and with like any neurodivergence at all, it's hard to follow what the world tells you to do when you're trying to set these priorities. So
yeah.
what do you do to help yourself set priorities of any kind?
Well, what I have noticed is that a lot of the goal setting slash productivity slash time management, like that whole crowd, it's a lot of the similar advice, and it
Yeah.
doesn't work for me. Like I'm sure it works for other people, but none of it seems to work for me. And I think part of that is because they always say like prioritize urgency, like what feels more urgent. And I'm like, I can't tell. Like to
Yeah.
me, it always feels everything feels urgent. I don't have a way of measuring, like having
Mm-hmm.
that ADHD. If I need to do something, it feels urgent. And I also
Yeah.
don't have really great method of measuring like which one is small versus which one is huge. Like it all feels big and urgent.
Yeah.
So, what I do is at the beginning of the day, my first 2 to 3 steps, they are literally based on what my vision is for my career or my book, like what I want it to look like. The first 2 or 3 things that I do every single day are for that. And
Yeah.
that way, no matter how bad the rest of the day goes, like no matter how much I'm fighting with kids or schedules or whatever, I am at least 2 to 3 steps closer to what I'm trying to accomplish. And
Mm,
that allows me to at least end the day on a high note because I know I got that done.
that's nice. That's good. Yeah, it's so hard to just kind of wander around your to-do list and not know what your priorities are. It makes things difficult.
Very, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But in the future, people can answer the question of the week at the Sell More Book Show After Party Facebook group or over at sellmorebookshow.com. Top story of the week:
Hmm.
audio's up and Spotify helped. There are signs that Spotify might not only be gaining on Audible, but may also be driving overall audiobook consumption higher too, reports Alexandra Alter for the New York Times. While audiobook sales have been growing dramatically for more than a decade, according to Bookstat, the audiobook market in the United States grew 14% in the fourth quarter of 2023 compared to the previous year. Using figures provided by Spotify, Bookstat estimated that Spotify had a market share of 11%, putting them ahead of Apple and behind Audible along the dominant platforms. Quote, it suggests that Spotify grew the market rather than cannibalizing existing Audible and Apple customers, says Bookstat's Paul Abbasi, the founder formerly known as Data Guy. Spotify is well known for its recommendation engine, and publishers and authors are hopeful that their algorithm based recommendations will help readers find books they'd otherwise never find. Amanda D'Asierno of Penguin Random House Audio says that their audiobooks on Spotify skew younger and male, which is not the traditional audience for audiobooks. Quote, what we've seen here in the US is very, very good. They're reaching people who don't go to bookstores often, end quote. Meanwhile, there are signs that neither Spotify nor Audible is thriving. As Jane Friedman in her Hot Sheet newsletter mentioned, Spotify cut 17% of its workforce in 2023. Audible, too, is laying off staff, with 5% let go of this year already. So it's a little bit of a cringy thing at the end there.
It was growing so well.
I know, it was going so well. There's new listeners to audiobooks, but these audiobook companies are slashing staff. Um, but to the first point, I mean, like let's even just go right into the hot potatoes of wisdom. We'll work around them a little bit. But
Hmm.
do you think, Naomi, that the increase in audiobook sales overall, that 14% increase just in the fourth quarter, will continue? Or could this have just been a one time surge from Spotify entering the market? What do you think?
I think it's going to continue, but I think this surge is going to be like a spike. I don't know if it's
Yeah,
going to continue at the same velocity that it's,
right.
went up, but I think we are going to continue seeing, I mean, book sales have been going up year over year in any format, and I think audiobooks are going to continue, especially as more and more people start to recognize audiobooks, and more audiobooks are also entering the market, not even just on Spotify, but we're finally seeing more people putting out audiobooks. So I think
Yes.
they're going to continue going up.
Yeah, and I mean, we haven't even talked about it here, but audiobooks that are not created by narrators and that are created using technology are coming into the space, and that will have an
Mhm.
impact as well. Um, but we've got another hot potato wisdom question from you to me. What you got?
Yes, Brian. What will it take for Spotify to have a noticeable impact on Audible sales?
So this is really interesting, right? So Spotify moved up, surpassed Apple in that fourth quarter of 2023, but is still behind Audible. Audible is still the leader in audiobooks. What does Spotify need to do? Well, I think if it is going to take this seriously, it is going to have to beef up its audiobook division. Cutting 17% of its staff as it did at the end of the year is probably not going to be what it needs to do if it is going to go at number one in this industry. It also needs to, and I know this was something we touched upon last year, was this not quite being sure exactly what Spotify and Findaway Voices are doing when it comes to compensating authors for things like all you can listen type offerings. We still don't truly know, even though we did have some answers from their PR team. We don't truly know how it is going to impact authors. And I think Spotify and Findaway need to come out to the community more. They need to involve authors in this because authors don't want to be stuck with Audible. Authors want to have options. But much like Kobo has done a wonderful job of in the past of connecting with authors and helping them with promotions, and Draft to Digital has done for authors, I think if Spotify did that, Spotify would start to see a chance to impact those Audible sales. So, more people, more connections with readers and authors. You can do it, Spotify.
We believe in you.
We believe in you. We hope that you can do it. Do you listen to audiobooks, Naomi?
I do. I just recently started reading audiobooks. I have a auditory processing disorder, so
Mm,
I do struggle with audiobooks
yeah.
to an extent. But what I'm finding is as more, especially nonfiction authors, start putting out their own audiobooks, I can read those much more easily than, say, a fiction book that's written in first person that my
Right.
brain cannot process.
That makes total sense. That makes total sense. Yeah, when I lived in Chicago, I would listen to audiobooks all the time on the L, on the train, doing all that. Um, my daughter suddenly just like got obsessed with audiobooks, and she listened to all 8 Ramona Quimby books in 2 weeks.
Wow.
I was pretty impressed at her focus there. Um, let's go into the lightning round. This is your second opportunity to make a lightning sound, Naomi.
I
Have at it. You can do
I like
this.
what did I do last time? Like
Ooh, that was good. You know, it shook a little.
oh
I
good.
liked
See,
that. Yeah, it got
I got
there was some
better.
movement. There was some improvement. I think if we did this 100 straight weeks, you would get so much better every single week. All right. I got to talk you up on this one because, Naomi, you've picked up 40,000 plus followers on TikTok and a variety of platforms like YouTube, like Clubhouse. What do you think that you say that authors feel they need to hear?
Mostly, like my biggest message that I always put out over and over and over again is your story matters.
Mm,
It's an underlying theme in most of my videos. It's an underlying theme throughout my book is like anyone can teach you how to write a book. It's not a very complicated, it is complex, but it's not a very complicated process.
mm,
Anyone can show it to you. But not everyone tells authors, especially new authors, that their story matters and that they need to be writing and sharing their book and that their story in the form of a book and how that's going to help them and help their readers. Even, people tend to think of that message as being for nonfiction, but it's there for fiction authors as well. Like the story matters.
mm.
And I repeat it all the time.
I love it. I love it. And I followed you on TikTok because I enjoyed that message as well, for sure. So
I thank you.
you're so welcome. You're so welcome. I think you've got a question for me.
I do. Should you make the effort to put yourself everywhere on social media?
So, should you make this effort to be on all channels on social media at all times? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, you never have to do everything. There's no shoulds in this. I mean, we both love Becca Syme and her QTP, question the premise. We don't
Mhm.
necessarily have to be everywhere. We don't have to be omnipresent. There might be a time if you had great success and you had enough money for a team and you could outsource parts of the process, then maybe. But chances are you are one person trying to run your entire business, and while you are trying to do all of the writing things, you are also getting all these cues that you should be everywhere, that you should post a million times a day. And there's no shoulds. If a platform resonates with you and you enjoy being on it and you enjoy posting on it and you enjoy interacting with readers on it, then maybe that's the platform for you. But you don't also have to then be on 6 other platforms that don't resonate with you. Start with one and maybe eventually branch out. But you could also start with 0 because you don't necessarily need to be on social media in order to be a success.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
It's too much distraction anyway. Just too much distraction.
Right.
Um Naomi, this was a question. It came from Roland, who puts together our show every week, who's so fantastic. And I thought it was a good question to ask you here. So, what refills your well these days, your creative well? What books or movies or music or TV are you taking in to refill that bucket?
Um, so first, I have a tendency because most of the time when I am taking time for myself, it's late at night.
Yeah.
And so I fall into this like it's so hard to explain, but I fall into this like mode of I really want to sit down and watch something, but I don't want it to be something new because I also
Yeah.
want to fall asleep to it, but I need it to be interesting enough that I stick to it.
Yeah.
Um, so
Nice. It's
a
got to
lot of
fit in that
times,
narrow window.
yes, exactly. So some of my comfort shows that fit into that are like Merlin,
Okay.
um,
Yep.
Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm.
I watch a lot of, especially the classic Doctor Who that is streaming on Tubi.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
the fourth Doctor is like like he was my first Doctor. So like
Yeah.
I watched the Tom Baker years all the time. Um, and almost anything with Star in it, Star Wars, Star Trek, like I
Yeah.
just Stargate. So yeah, a lot of science fiction, some science fantasy, some, futuristic fantasy, but yeah, you'll find me with all of those all the time.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I mean, we need that time. We need to refill that well, and if you do it with Tom Baker, then you can't go wrong.
You can't go wrong with Tom Baker.
You've got a question for me, Naomi.
I do. So you've hired a lot of team members who happen to be neurodivergent. Do you think this is a coincidence or does something draw you to people who are neurodivergent?
It's really interesting. I wanted to ask this to myself really while I was here because I don't actually know why I've ended up hiring a lot of people who are neurodivergent. I think that um I love people who think differently. I love people who process information in different ways. And some of the wonderful people I've had a chance to work with, like Quinn Ward and Scarlett Moss, they are just so kind and so giving, but also happen to think in a different way than a lot of people. And that has led, I think, my business to interesting places because they've done a lot of the early work in my business with Author Ad School and with Self Publishing Live. And so I do think that I just love seeing people who are interesting and behave in interesting ways that I don't immediately understand. So maybe there is this draw to like people I'm trying to like figure out, because it's like, oh, I figured you out in 2 seconds. You're boring. But like someone who I still don't quite know what they're going to do or why they do it, it's like, okay, I'm going to stick with you for a while because this is making my brain work as well. So I don't know. So really the answer was I don't know, but it was fun to talk about. So, last question to you, Naomi. Do you think that people who are neurodivergent, do you think that if someone is neurodivergent, it should change the type of advice that they follow as an author?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I think I think everyone, neurodivergent and neurotypical, should know what their strengths are and
Yeah.
like how their brain functions in general. I think being able to to create a writing strategy or a marketing strategy, both of which are very personal choices, um, you should definitely have an understanding of what your brain needs. I think that neurodivergent people, we have a tendency to do that more often because we're always
Yeah.
told we're so different anyway. So we're kind of forced into it. So, you know, as we're
Right.
as we're going through things, we have to know how our brain is different. Um, what makes it hard is that a lot of the advice out there, um, it's it's geared towards neurotypical people because it works for so many people. Things like
Right.
if you want to be a writer, you have to write every day. That works for neurotypical people who can block off the time. But for someone who's neurodivergent who follows their feelings, if they wake up and they don't feel like writing and writing is not going to give them that dopamine hit, or if they've been
Hmm.
too deep into their story now, that kind of advice isn't going to work. They have to find some other way to get themselves motivated to write, um
Yeah.
or they have to like start fast drafting so that they can get the story out before they lose interest,
Yeah.
like it has to they have to know how their brain works so that they can. I always say that writing advice is like eating at a buffet, like take what you need and don't sneeze on the rest. And that's like especially true for neurodivergent people because sometimes you can take that advice and tweak it to how you need it to work for you. And then that's when you know that you've got a routine that's going to work for you.
That's really awesome. And that's good to know because, as a person who works with a lot of neurodivergent people. So
You're
thank you.
welcome.
Thank you. Yeah. So, Naomi, we need a question of the week. Um, I know we're a little short on time here. So, let's see. What if we did the refill your well question? We asked everybody else what they thought.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Love it.
good. What refills your well these days? What books, movies, music, TV? That was written by Roland, so we got to give credit to Roland here. You can answer that question of the week over at sellmorebookshow.com or at the Sell More Book Show After Party Facebook group. Naomi, I want people to go seek you out at Help Me Naomi on all the socials, who wants to write a book.com. Check out Glitz and Grammar, all that stuff. Uh, it's been so nice having you these last couple of weeks.
Thank you so much for having me. You were a blast to hang out with.
Well, I'm glad you think that. Yeah, and we get to hang out all over again in October at Self Publishing Live. And I hope more people will come. Selfpublishinglive.com. It should be a blast.
I can't wait.
Yay, awesome. Well, for Naomi, I'm Brian. I hope everyone has a great week of book selling, and we'll talk to you soon for episode 515 with another mystery guest co host. So take good care, everybody, and bye.
Bye.
Okay, I'm trying to stop it. Stop, 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 stop. It says stop.